Curious Christmas card collection, Moana Maki.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I thank the Minister and the Chair for taking a call. Of course, he went to great lengths to read out a Crown Law opinion around how this wasn't going to have any impact on the independence or the independent voice of the National Librarian, National Library being heard. But if
Point of order, the Honourable Darren Hughes.
Sorry to interrupt my colleague. The document has been tabled. I am observing proceedings. It hasn't been stamped. My colleagues approached to try and get a copy of it. I now see a twink pen or a whitener has been handed to the Minister to remove things for a document that has already been tabled. That document is now the property of the committee, the property of the House, not of the Minister. The idea that it's going to be tampered with after it's been given and it has not yet been stamped, I think, sir, is very concerning. So it's now the committee's property. A member of the committee wants to look at it immediately, and then that should be available to the committee member.
That's why we need an independent archivist.
Can I assure the member of Parliament does have an independent archivist? It's the clerk's office. The document's tabled. Point of order, Clayton Cosgrove. I trust this is a new point of order.
It is, sir. I think it is appropriate, given what's just been said, that we get an assurance from the Minister that the document that he has tabled in the interim between it going to the clerk and being stamped has not been altered or tampered with in any way. And I'd like an assurance.
Correct. The member could have taken that from my statement before that the document has been tabled. And if the member is saying that I am telling him that a different document has been tabled, with respect, a different document is being tabled, then that's a reflection on the chair. I just want to say, confirm to the House, the document has been tabled, the member should accept that at its word. Moana Maki. Point of order.
I just want to give an absolute assurance, sir. I was not doing what you're suggesting. I was simply asking, not questioning your word, but given twink bottles have been floating around.
Does the member wish to withdraw and apologise?
Absolutely, sir. I never question your I never question your integrity, sir. I just wanted that assurance from the Minister.
You've got the assurance, Stephen.
And Mr. Speaker, I think the problem is that members up there couldn't see as the document came down and went across, whereas I did. And so I can confirm he didn't even try.
Order. The matter's been dealt with. The matter has been dealt with. I've given the House now 3 assurances that it is the same document. I don't need to know whether members are confused, disorientated, can't figure out whether it's Thursday or Saturday. None of that's relevant. The document has been tabled. Everybody's satisfied. Honour is restored. That is the end of the matter. If I have another point of order on this matter, I will... Moana Maki.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And if there was ever an example of why we need an independent archivist to avoid these kind of very situations, this is going to be the Minister responsible for the National Library and the National Archives, and already, even we're only in the committee stages of a piece of legislation that seeks to bring together the National Archives and the National Library and put them into the Department of Internal Affairs, and already serious questions are being raised about the independence of the process and whether or not important government documents have been tampered with. If we can't even get through the committee stage of the whole House feeling assured that there's not going to be any political interference, what is it going to be like when we actually merge the two entities? And I want to comment on the Minister's contribution where he read out the Crown Law opinion about how this was not going to have any impact on the functioning of the National Library in Part 2 of this bill. And, of course, that was the case back when these two entities used to be together in the 1990s. And if the Minister got out of his ivory tower and actually talked to the people who work in the National Library, they would have told him that despite the law, and the Crown Law opinion would have said exactly the same thing back then, despite the legal situation, the reality was that they did struggle with that independence. The reality reality was they did struggle to have their voice heard when they were under DIA and the Ministry of Education, as they have been in the past. So instead of reading from some piece of paper to make himself feel better, because legally Crown Law have said that he shouldn't worry about anything, why doesn't he actually talk to the people who worked in that entity the last time it was combined under the Department of Internal Affairs, who will tell him that what he has said in the House today is absolutely not correct? And this is why every single submission at Select Committee opposed this, because in reality they could not carry out those important constitutional functions of being independent, protecting the important public documents, when they were subsumed by a big government department like Internal Affairs. So I think it's very disappointing that the Minister chose not to address those facts. And I come to clause 30 of this bill, which talks about documents being made available for public exhibition. And of course, now that this entity, the National Library, is going to be part of the Department of Internal Affairs, I'm a little bit concerned, because another group which is covered by Internal Affairs is the Fire Service, the New Zealand Fire Service. And this is a minister that won't let opposition MPs visit fire departments without his permission. Without his permission. It is true. It is true. It is true. We are being stopped from... and the New Zealand Fire Service is actually quite independent from government, except that the Department of Internal Affairs covers the New Zealand Fire Commission, which regulates some of the areas of the fire service. So if this is a minister who's been stopping opposition MPs from visiting the fire service, what does that mean about the... Well, Sandra Gowdy should just take a call instead of screaming across the House. So what kind of confidence can we have that clause 30 of this piece of legislation will be adhered to, that the public will have access to all of the information in the National Library without ministerial interference, when the very minister who's going to be in charge of this, of the Department of Internal Affairs in the National Library, is one, the minister who just now we had to raise questions with about whether or not documents were being tampered with and properly filed with the clerk, and number two, has stopped opposition MPs visiting fire departments in their own areas. People that...
He says that's not true. We did that on the record.
He says that's not... Does the minister say that's not true? Opposition MPs are allowed to visit fire stations without his approval?
Oh, it's gone very quiet.
Oh, it's very quiet now. Very quiet. Can we visit fire stations without the minister's approval? Oh. Yes, no, maybe? Oh, he's got a policy. Yes, we know. Which is that we're not allowed to without the minister's permission. So what does that mean under clause 30? Under clause 30, what does this mean for ensuring that documents are made available for public exhibition so that members can have access to them, when the minister himself has blocked people from visiting other parts of DIA, even though he shouldn't have the power to do that? The second part I want to come to is in subpart 2, which is about the transfer of employees of the National Library. And the reason I want to raise this is in part 1 of the bill, there was quite an extensive, there was a lot of information about the transfer of employees. And there were some very important parts that were mentioned, which was that they would all go over on existing terms and conditions. And it clearly stated, Mr Chair, thank you very much, Mr Chair. And it very clearly stated that, that provisions under the KiwiSaver Act and the Employment Relations Act did not apply to these employees. And what I'm talking about is a 90-day right to fire period for new employees. Because in part 1 of the Act, which dealt with the merging of the Ministry of Research, Science and Technology and the Foundation of Research, Science and Technology into a new ministry, it made it very clear that those employees would not be required to be on a 90-day trial period. They would be deemed to just carrying on their employment. But in part 2 of this bill, we don't have those clauses. There's, in fact, subpart 2 has one clause on the transfer of employees, whereas subpart 1 had pages and pages and pages. So I would like to know from the Minister what that means for employees of the National Library when they are transferred over to the Department of Internal Affairs, because in here he hasn't ruled out those employees suddenly finding themselves on a 90-day right to fire probationary period, even though they may have been working with the National Library for more than a decade or even before that. So I would like the Minister and the Chair to tell us whether or not employees that are being transferred from the National Library to the Department of Internal Affairs will their employment be deemed to have been continuous, or will they suddenly find that they are categorised as new employees and suddenly are on a 90-day right to fire probationary period? So, well, the Minister is... Hello? No, the Minister isn't paying any attention to what members are saying, which is very distressing, because Clause 35 of Part 2 of this bill is very short when it comes to the transferring of employees. And I think that if there's anything